Welcome, my friends. Today is the 17th of April. Where is the time going? There goes April. Today, we're going to be hearing from our friend Cyndi. She's going to be teaching us on the law of priorities. And I cannot wait to hear from Cyndi on this one because I know she's very process oriented, and this happens to be a rather process oriented law. The law of priorities was quite intriguing when I learned it for the first time because it helped me process how I think and how I reason. And I am one who is a brutal 80-20% person that believes you got to do the top 20. Now, those of you in PMP world, which is pretty much everyone on this call, you remember we talked about the Pareto's principle, the 80-20 principle, the 80-20 rule, Pareto's law, all that stuff. And there is one person who you might have heard about who is like one of my, call him role models for CEO, and his name is Jack Welch. And Jack Welch is a CEO that had to practice this law because in 1981, when Jack inherited the title of CEO from GE, he also inherited an empire with 348 businesses. Now, it's like inheriting 348 businesses sprawled all across the world, jet engines, light bulbs, plastics, fridges. You've used GE stuff before, and then broadcasting, insurance, you name it. And it was a marvel on paper. It's kind of cool to say, I'm a CEO and we have 348 businesses. But beneath the surface, it was something else. It was a company that was dangerously diluted. Jack Welch understood a truth that many leaders do not. An organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action, being agile, as you always say, rapidly, is the ultimate competitive advantage. And GE, they were like a dinosaur. They were not translating size into action fast enough. It was heavy, it was gargantuan, it was slow, it was busy. But those 348 businesses, they were not winning at all. So think about it. Jack Welch, he was a brutal 80-20% rule practitioner. He took the concept, without calling it that, of Pareto's principle, which says 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes, or, I know you like this one, 20% of people at your family dinner eat 80% of the food. Or 80% of the people do 20% of the work. It's kind of sad. But let's put it simply, most of what you do doesn't matter. What? You mean 80% of the work I'm doing is only giving me a 20% return? That is very true. And that is what Jack Welch understood. And Jack Welch, he asked the question, where are we winning? Where are we getting the biggest return? Where are we getting the biggest bang for a buck? And his answer wasn't just a strategy, it was actually a revolution. And he announced that GE would only stay in business, watch this, where it was number one or number two in the entire world market. Wow. You mean if we're not number one or number two, we're going to be put out for sale or we're going to be divested or we're just going to be shut down? Yes. If a business couldn't claim that position of number one or number two, the path was clear. Fix it, sell it, or close it. This wasn't cautious trimming around the edges, trying to make people feel good. It was radical pruning. Entire divisions gone, entire industries exited. And Welch didn't just manage complexity, he obliterated it. And that's why gave him the nickname Neutron Jack. People thought this guy is crazy. He would wipe out entire business units. Now think about it. A business that was just 12 billion worth, by the time Jack Welch was done with his radical differentiation, that business grew to $410 billion worth. So he didn't just wake up and do this. He really thought it through, and it worked. While critics shouted, something extraordinary was happening. So over the next 2 decades, GE didn't just survive, it dominated. Jack understood efficiency. That's why he brought in my mentor, someone who was responsible for the Six Sigma movement, and said, we are going to implement Six Sigma. We're going to become more efficient. He was all about efficiency. And that's why he brought in Michael Harry. And he writes about this in his book. But he understood that being busy or having a big old size doesn't mean you're being efficient. So GE soared from the meager 12 billion worth to 410 billion by the time he retired. And Jack would say, control your own destiny, or someone else will. He didn't make GE bigger by adding more. That's what a lot of companies do. They're like, okay, we got to divest, we got to scale as well. So let's divest, but let's scale. He was all about just divesting what didn't work, killing what is ugly before it eats you alive. And he made GE stronger by focusing, pouring more revenues into the number one or the number two divisions. And Jack Welch understood what a lot of people miss. Growth isn't about doing everything, it's about doing the things, the right things exceptionally well. Because in this modern world, think about it, you don't have tons and tons of businesses, do you? But you have tons and tons of distractions. So when you take a look at the things that you've got to do, the emails, the new opportunities, fresh demands, people blowing up your phone, you got to ask yourself this question. What should I do? What shouldn't I do? What can I do without? What are the top 20 out of 100 that I really need to be focusing on? Michael Porter, well-known strategist, he would say, and he's come to speak for PMI before, he would say the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. So I leave you with this thought, my friends. As we go into our weeks, into our worlds, just remember, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. One of those people blowing up your phone. And with that, I yield to Cyndi.
Thank you. Thank you, Phill, for a great introduction. Couldn't ask for more. One of my favorite laws of the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by Maxwell is the law of priorities, that activities don't necessarily equate to accomplishments. One of the primary people that I really enjoyed reading about satisfied multiple priorities with each activity. In focusing up at what the actual vision was and translating that to actions down, this man was able to prioritize the UCLA Bruins to award-winning seasons. Wooden was amazing at orchestrating every moment and planning activities with a purpose in mind. And he, once again, took that vision he had for what needed to happen and created a structure of drills, made sure that each of the members of his football team felt valued and challenged and didn't necessarily know what was going to happen the next day. But he made sure that every member got to experience play. And he not only did that, but he rarely, if ever, focused on watching others play, other teams play, because he focused so much on his own team. And I want to challenge you today to focus not only on you, but your teams that you work with. And how did he do this? Well, he understood that one drop creates additional waves of motion. And he knew that just keeping people busy, like doing 50 plays in a row, was not necessarily going to get him what he needed. He needed to make sure that somebody always saw what they needed to accomplish. So he wanted to make sure everybody was focused not only on the future, but also was always changing and being challenged. But this isn't easy. And there are reasons why many leaders skip this prioritization, is because you have to understand, as Phill described, what to cull, what is not important, and how everything that you do, that you assign people, or even in my case, assign myself, how it fits with the vision that you have in mind. And so I know several of you know people that are always busy, but I want you to also figure out who is a leader and who is seen as doing things of value, excuse me. Sometimes that's not the same. Now, others, you will find that some of the people that are most accomplished are some of the busiest people you know. So do take busyness with a grain of salt and take a look at them and decide what exactly are their attributes? What makes them so good at that? One of the things that a lot of people are good at is learning and maybe deciding that maybe eggs aren't going to be best shipped in a box that's just a packed with packing bubbles. Maybe it needs some creativity to make sure each egg is nestled carefully. Hence, we got egg cartons, and this is one of the versions of egg cartons. And they also tend to reinvent the future. They have vision boards or strategy meetings, 3 to 5 year, mostly 3 years these days, strategic plans, not only for their teams, but maybe even for themselves. If you ask them when they're going to go on vacation or what they're going to do next, they usually have something to say. They've got a plan in mind. And so they are focusing on the things that are most important. They're focusing on the requirements of what they do now at work or what is needed for their friends, their family, their household, their spiritual growth, and they're looking at what the return is and what the reward is. So, one of the ideas, of course, is to work on a vision board. And I've shared with you in prior discussions about creating something that takes you from not only where you need to go emotionally and the obstacles in your way, but gives you metrics to concentrate on, needs and resources, people you can call on, as well as what you need to do to take the first step. So I do encourage you, if you don't already have a vision board or just a list of these things, that you consider doing that. Because after all, we're all trying to figure out what is required of me and what must I do, not only at work, but also personally, that nobody can or should do for me. And then maybe we can delegate the rest or say a prayer for it and then give it to someone else or decide not to do it at all in the case of Jack Welch. So, what gives the greatest return? Well, at my job, I know I need to focus on the priorities of my leaders, but I also need to focus on what energizes me and what my long term goals are. So, when I'm thinking about my job, I need to figure out is is it really true that I need to do this thing actually myself? Can I get a team member to help me do it? If they're going to do it 80% as well as me, do I need to negotiate with them or ask them, since they may have a vested interest in it, do you want to do this task while I take one of your other ones? Or can you shorten the time it takes me to do this by giving me some tips? So, likewise, can I think of things that maybe I need to teach others and grow them and show them what they need to do so that maybe I can move on to some of my priorities. I understand some of us have the ability to delegate more than others, but please keep this in mind as far as keeping your vision in mind and also thinking very clearly, black and white. Does it make sense that you're doing it, or does it make sense that somebody else is doing it? So think through that. And then there's always our heart, which I love talking about, is what is in your mind, in your heart? what is your passion, and what are you going to stay late and make endless adjustments to make sure you get right because it's in your heart and in your passion. So figure out what energizes you and make sure you let your leaders know and your friends know what energizes you so they can help ease your way. So do reorder your priorities by the importance. And you may have at work leadership, communicating, creating, networking. Think through what percentages of 100 you would give to each of these categories and keep those in mind as well. So sometimes our activity is high, but our accomplishment is not what it could or should be. And so figure out the requirements that are demanded literally of you and your resources, not just maybe literally you, unless that has been decided. So take some action, and this is your challenge this week, is decide what 10 tasks need to be cleared off your list. Maybe you wanted to do that project, but you don't feel like you've got time to. Does it really need to be done? And how can you dedicate more time to your top priorities? Are there things that you can just give up? And so please do consider taking a 2-week challenge and look at the top 20% of your goals every day and get those done. And find an accountability partner, not only at home or friend wise, but also at work. So you can try this experiment of looking at what do I absolutely need to take care of this week. So since I was feeling a bit overwhelmed the other day, I went out and bought my trusty composition book, just like you see on the screen. I don't know if you can see it, but basically, this composition book takes me back to childhood days, research days, test days, honestly. And I decided what I really needed to do was write down every single thing that I needed to take care of, not professionally, but personally, so that I and decide what truly was important. So from spiritual to home maintenance to by room, what I wanted to do, I broke it down into all the things that needed to be done. And then I also added a next steps category. And so, what my goal is now is to periodically look at one of those next steps and cross it off. The only way to get a next step going for me was to look at the whole picture. This may not be something you want to do, but I bet even if you take one corner of your universe and start through this process, it will pay off by you realizing that maybe there are shorter ways of getting this all done. So I just wanted to remind you, uh, one of my favorite teams, you and your teams are number one. And what that means is you've got to act as the CEO of your universe. You've got the CEO at work, but you also have the CEO of your spirituality, your home, your family, and your health. So please let me know how I can help you continue to be number one. Thanks, Phill.
All right, some very
Thank
great
you,
words.
Cindy.
Wow, this is awesome. I appreciate your diligence and your delivery. And there you have it, my friends. You learned about the law of priorities, and I know quite a number of you are probably project managers, business people, business professionals, and there's so many things you can take away from it. Have you woken up in the morning, or maybe just come out of a busy session, a meeting, only to look at your phone and see that people are blowing the thing up? And what do you prioritize first? Do you prioritize people who are just incessantly calling you? Or do you prioritize what is going to give you the biggest return and the biggest reward? So the project manager has a huge problem that needs to be solved. And that problem is everyone wants a piece of the PM. Everyone wants a piece of your time and your attention. And it's a very slippery slope as a project manager because if you don't respond, you're looked at as being horrible. And if you do respond, sometimes you're sucked into a silo. There's something else that we can talk about that Jack Welch made very popular in the world of business. And that thing is candor. Candor, just being candid. If you do not have that bandwidth at the moment, you just have to be candid and say, can we find a better time? Now, a lot of times project managers feel they have to do everything and they don't focus on the top 20%. But before we go today, I want to give you some further insights, some further thoughts, some further ideas in leadership that I've been very fortunate enough to learn from John Maxwell, who wrote the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. See, the law of priorities is just one of the laws, right? There are many other laws. For those of you that don't know about the Project Leadership Institute, it was founded about 5 years ago, just at the time COVID took hold, and John was our keynote speaker and helped us kick off the Project Leadership Institute. And for the past 5 years now, going to 5 years, we've been studying a lot of John Maxwell's work. We've been studying various leadership concepts. We also refresh our memories about what we learned when we got certified, because I know a lot of people, they become PMPs and everything they learned, it gets chucked out of the window, never to be seen again. No, that's not how we roll here. The way we roll is getting involved, hyper involved in the world of project management, and also very passionate about the things that we learned in the very beginning of our journey. So, what has brought many of us together in this world of the Project Leadership Institute is actually being PMP certified. So, we're very grateful for that. That the project management professional exam is more to us than just an exam. It's a melting pot of ideas. It's a confluence of great people worldwide, and it's a way of moving companies forward. And I want to encourage those of you who are PMPs. You might be a little bit timid, a little bit shy in your organization, and maybe you're not taking a leadership role. Maybe you're sitting in the back seat and saying, well, I guess the PMO will tell us what to do. No. The PMO doesn't always have all the answers, right? Sometimes people have ideas that can help entire firms. And maybe you're the person that has a great idea and you're sitting down, being quiet, trying to be all cute, no one to take the leadership role. You should take the leadership role. So, for that reason, for those of you who are keen on learning more about leadership today, I'm going to teach you the 10 laws of project leadership. And these are laws that I have curated along the way. I've picked them up from my mentor, John Maxwell, who wrote the book that we studied earlier. And I have curated them to make meaning out of the concept of leadership in project management. Because if you haven't been a project manager, if you've not stepped into that world, it is hard to explain the challenge. There is a challenge in project management, and it's leading without authority. And for a very long time, I found it hard to understand how can you even consider doing this? There's no way this is going to work. You need the authority, you need the position. But as I began to study more with John, I realized that the true measure of leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. It's all about influence. And in order to influence, you don't need the title or the position. You have it though, but it's a good starting point. Your position is just a starting point. Whether you are even the CEO, it is just a starting point. That is not necessarily going to make your people follow you because they want to. You could lead by a reign of terror, or you could lead by being a servant. And that is what a lot of the laws that I'm going to share with you tonight are based on. So let us jump into a topic. which I call the 10 laws of project leadership. Not just leadership. Leadership is very far reaching. But when it comes to project leadership, being a project manager, a PMP, an SP, an RMP, an ACP, a CSM, a PSM, I could go on and on. I've learned to look at leadership through a PM lens. And I know where a lot of PMs get stuck. They get stuck because they're thinking about their title being relegated to project manager. But in order to effectively lead in your firm, you got to step outside of just seeing yourself as I'm a project manager and that's who I am. No, you are a servant leader. That's why I love the world of Agile. When I got into the world of Agile, thanks to my buddy Roy, who got me deeper into it, I began to see myself as a catalyst, as a servant leader beyond just being a project manager. And I think I'd started drinking the Kool Aid for a while because when I was at Honeywell and I saw a lot of my colleagues taking this exam that brings many of us together, the PMP exam, failing miserably, I didn't just sit idly by and say, well, I guess that's not my problem. It kind of troubled me because I realized the organization was shelling out a lot of money. So what did I do? I decided to stand up and say, I would like to help. How can you help? Well, I know we got hundreds of people taking this exam. I want to mentor and coach them. You just got certified 6 months ago. You're not qualified to do that. No one said that. My boss, Jim Schaefer, rest his soul, he allowed me to lead by escalating that to his boss, Mark. And Mark said, well, they want to like gather. We can provide some pizzas. Where there's pizzas, people gather. And we've got so many people failing the PMP exam. We might as well have someone help them. At the end of the day, my friends, I got 50 of my colleagues certified PMPs at Honeywell. It was not my job, but I stepped up to the plate. So I share these laws with you to inspire you to step outside your comfort zone and mentor, encourage, and lead wherever you are. Are you ready? Let's get into these 10 laws of project leadership. All right. Jumping straight in to the very first one. This is similar to what Cyndi just taught, and it's the law of ruthless prioritization. You got to prioritize like a vicious product owner, like a savage. If it doesn't move the mission, cut it loose. You're not here to be busy. You're in your organization to drive outcomes that impact the bottom line. So, as you work daily, you always need to ask yourself, as a good project leader, how is this impacting the bottom line? Is this impacting the bottom line, or is this just busy work? Is this something that I truly should be doing to make that difference? Or is it something I should be cutting out? And unfortunately, a lot of times, hey, let's be realistic and honest. A ton of project documents. No one is ever going to look at those project documents once they're created. But we find ourselves creating them. And that's why whenever I train project management content from Pembroke Guide or some other place, I am very quick to inform them you got to tailor. You got to be a tailorer of the process. And on top of that, you got to be a tailorer of the content that you're working on, your scope. See, the problem with a lot of projects is they haven't tried to descope. They haven't put on the descoping hat and asked, is this truly important? Could we do without it? Okay, it says that this is one of the features, but is it a must have or is it a would like? And that will help you prioritize those things. There's nothing wrong in doing would likes, but that's not what you want to do first. All right, let's move on to the next law. The next law is the law of focused empowerment. As a project manager, you may say, well, this isn't my job. This is a job of the functional manager. This is a job of HR. No, this is your job as well. You got to focus your people like a servant leader. You got to remove roadblocks that are in their way, and you got to trust them to deliver. Your power is in their success. I like what the Agile Manifesto says. It says, give the team the environment and support they need and do what? Trust them. Trust them. Trust them to get the job done. And that is not just for management, that's for anyone, that's even for the team themselves. So, in this law of focused empowerment, you got to empower the team by understanding there is no I in team. It's not all about me as the PM. You see, in the world of predictive and traditional, there has been a bad habit for a long time that we need to break. Me, I'm the link, the strongest link. It's all about me. I do the planning, I do the directing. And we need to move away from that in the world of project management because we're becoming more hybridized than ever before, as a lot of PMI's surveys and research has shown. Okay, so we want to keep that in mind. It's not about us, it's about the team. All right, let's move on to the next one. The law of practical process. Respect the framework, but never become its prisoner. You got to tailor the process to serve the mission and not the other way around. We have 49 processes in the sixth edition. Now they're busy engineering the eighth edition, and I have a feeling they're going to be less. But still, even if you had 12 processes, even if you had six, you still got to ask the question, are all these relevant? You see? And if it's not relevant, you got to be lean. You got to be a lean, mean machine. Cut out the muda, cut out the fat, cut out the waste. Okay. This is the law of practical process. If it's not adding value, cut it out. The next one is the law of stakeholder gravity. Win the people or lose the project. You know, it amuses me when I see PMs at loggerheads with stakeholders, and I'm like, goodness gracious, this is your job. You got to engage these people. Don't you understand? PMI put 4 processes in place. You got to identify the stakeholders. Why? So you can effectively plan how to engage them. And 3, so you can engage them. A lot of people, they are loggerheads. They hate their stakeholders. They hate the customer. And I just find it so comedic because these are the reasons why you have a job. No matter how annoying you find a stakeholder or customer, they exist because there's value that you need to add to them. Or perhaps you need to do a turnaround. Turn that negative stakeholder into a raving fan. Then I know you're truly a project manager who's in it to win it. You got to neutralize your mind. You know, one of my philosophies is every stakeholder is a potential ally until proven otherwise. And even then, you still have an opportunity to show your skills as a project manager. All right. So shape expectations before they shape you. It's going to be too late when you're on the project and there's pushback. Pushback is actually good. I love pushback. I love conflict. I relish in conflict, not destructive conflict, but conflict that's going somewhere, that's going to be resolved through collaboration, through patience. Okay, so PMs, those of you who you maybe you accidentally found yourself in the world of project management, like I'm getting out of here. I hate this stuff. Don't give up. The law of stakeholder gravity will see you through. You got to win the people. It's a job, it's a challenge, yes, but the benefits are truly tremendous. Let's talk about the law of relentless value focus. I love what the Agile Manifesto said. It said, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer. How? Think about it. How do you satisfy a customer? Through early and continuous delivery of valuable products. So it just tells us, as business professionals, as workers, knowledge workers, whatever you might be, you got to focus on value. Effort without value is wasted motion. You know, we talk about Tim Wood in the Seven Wastes. Unnecessary motion is muda. You got to cut it out. If it doesn't deliver real value, rethink it, sharpen it, or cut it out. Let's move on to our next one. We're almost done. The law of inspiration and motivation. I love a quote from Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar says, well, people say, I want to have a shower. I took one yesterday and the day before. But is that the right way to think? No. Zig Ziglar said motivation is like bathing. You don't say I had a shower yesterday. I'm not going to take one today. You'll be reeking. It's like the team. Our jobs as project leaders is to understand We should be motivating, inspiring, and encouraging. You see, I keep talking about the Agile Manifesto because there's so much to learn from the world of Agile. The world of Agile is based on a servant leader mindedness, where the mindset of the Scrum Master is, how can I serve you, team? What obstacles can I remove? What impediments? What blockers can I remove? Can I get you some food? Can I get you some drink? Can I get you a pizza? And honestly, these are things that knowledgeable Scrum Masters do. They will put their resources on the line to get a pizza for a hardworking team that's been busting their tail all day and night and understanding they need a break, understanding that they need to come to their rescue with some food, with some refreshments, with some nourishment, with some inspiration and motivation. And that is what I want project leaders to take away from that world of Agile, to understand we should be an inspiration and motivation to our team members. We shouldn't be looking to the hiring managers. Oh, well, I guess you got a direct boss you report to. I guess he'll just help you feed you. No, no. You got to be responsible for that. So I want you to begin seeing yourself as an inspiration and a motivation to the team. I want you to cast the vision. Like if you're working on a project, you got to understand the why behind the project and you got to ignite the vision and constantly ignite the vision. You know, John Maxwell, my mentor, he'll say, because vision leaks. It does, it leaks. So there's a lot of vision leakage and people forget why they're working and what they're working. You got to anchor them back. So that inspiration and motivation is also your responsibility. These are things you should be accountable for. This is the stuff they don't teach you in PMP school, but I'm teaching you now. The next one is the law of adaptive agility. You got to adapt or die. You got to welcome change as fuel for better outcomes. You got to become a change agent. The PMI says enable change to get to the envisioned future state. So you got to pivot with purpose. It's okay. Some people get really nervous when they see things changing around them. And I'm like, change is good. Now, you do have bad change, which is needless change, kaiaku, as we would call it, right, in the Japanese, but there's kaizen. It's a good word, change for the better. And you got to welcome change as fuel. You know, one of the things I laugh about these days is people pushing against this thing called artificial intelligence. They're like, oh, hate AI. It's going to take our jobs. AI is taking that job and that job. We hate it. And I'm like, my goodness, there's not going to be much of you in the next couple of years if this is your attitude towards AI, because guess what? It ain't going away. A lot of countries and companies are harnessing AI harder than ever before. And your unwillingness to change is going to be the death of your career. Mark my words. Couple of years, people who are refusing to embrace artificial intelligence and find a way of harnessing the beast. Just put the beast in your own special jar, your own special genie in the bottle. If you can't do that, you're going to be obsolete very soon. All right. Let's talk about the law of growth minded leadership. Projects build products, but leaders, they build people. They mentor, they teach, they see themselves as change agents. So they challenge and they grow. And they don't just challenge others, they challenge themselves. I want to give you a challenge. What is the biggest goal you've had for yourself since you got certified? Did you have a goal since you got certified? And I'm not saying add more certifications. No, I'm talking about doing something profound. You got to define what is profound for you. But I can tell you, it's not getting more certifications. You know what it is? It's doing something with your certification, my friend. What are you doing with your PMP? You know, I just laugh when people say, you know, they're like kind of like Phil. So they got PMP, RMP, SP, AC. They got all the alphabet soup. I see you've been collecting these things, buddy. What are you going to do? Sell them at an auction? What are you doing with all your certifications? And the answer is just collecting more, using it as leverage to collect more. And that's the wrong way, my friend. Part of growth is being a river, not a reservoir. You got to give. So I'm encouraging you, I'm challenging you. Who are you mentoring? Who are you training in your firm? If you are a PMP and you have not had a webinar, a seminar, a mastermind for people who want to get to where you are, I want to challenge you. What are you doing? This is part of the holy grail of PMI. They call it giving back to the community. A lot of you ain't giving back. The community doesn't even know you exist because you've done nothing. What have you done for the community lately? I challenge you, my friends. Let me tell you, I challenged myself and I said, okay, I gotta be more useful. Gotta be more useful to my chapter. You can find the videos on YouTube, me speaking at PMI Phoenix chapter a number of times, Scottsdale chapter, the in between Mesa Tempe chapter that meets at the casino. I've spoken there a number of times. You got to go through the rites of passage when you're in this world. And I give a shout out to some of my members like Shamir, who was involved with her North Carolina chapter. A lot of you folks, you don't even know where your chapter is. And you're meant to be a PMP? No, do better. Do better. Do better, my friends. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Okay, the law of ruthless optimization. It just says cut the crud, slash the red tape, protect your team's energy and bandwidth like it's gold. It's part of that cutting out the muda. Muda is waste. In the world of Six Sigma, we're all about being efficient, high levels of efficiency. I want you to take that lean and mean mindedness and cut out the crud, cut out the annoying documentation and the busyness. But you're also doing this to protect your team's energy. Finally, my friends, and it's a reason why it's last, it's called the law of strategic retrospection. The law of strategic retrospection says don't wait until you get to the end of the project. You see, the problem with a lot of folks, they get to the end of the project and they're like, ooh, I guess this is how we shouldn't have run the project. Are you kidding me? At the end, after you've got five colleagues working on similar projects and you didn't warn them of all the errors and the mistakes that you found? And that's why I would rather you think retrospectively on a cadence. And I don't want this cadence to be, well, every month I guess we'll do a retrospective. No, no, no. That's too long. The cadence, I want you to make the cadence as quick as possible. How about doing it every 2 weeks? Can you do that? I'm sure you can. As a project manager, right? As a project leader, how about doing it every week? Can you retrospect every week? Now, you know what retrospecting is all about? It's like asking what went well so we can repeat that, what didn't go so well so that we take that as an opportunity to improve, and what can we do right now? Sometimes it's a mental adjustment, sometimes it's an awareness, and it's just a mental tweak, and you're done. And you begin finding the benefits of that retrospection. So you can actually do it on a daily basis. Watch this. You can actually do it on an hourly basis. I want you as a project leader to always retrospect. Take away the time box. While the cadence is important as a team, as an individual, I want you to retrospect on the regular. You could retrospect every minute, every second. It could be fluid. You're always looking for the opportunity. How can I improve? How can I do this better? How can our team do this better? And when you find those things, you don't just put them in a lessons learned register. You know, in the world of PMBOK, we have a lessons learned register and it goes in there and it sits there. And guess what? Nobody ever looks at it. ever, ever again. It's like going to the bottomless pit of the project. But I want that to change. I want us to begin sharing our lessons learned, socializing our lessons learned. I want to challenge you in your organization. Do you have one of those things called a PMO? I have nothing against PMOs, but I do have something against PMOs that are not agile. And you know what the PMI said in the Agile Practice Guide? It said, in addition to PMOs, we have VDOs, Value Delivery Offices. And I don't blame people for wanting to respin the name of the PMO because in a lot of firms, it has a negative connotation. It has a draconian dinosauric connotation. So I want us to move away from that and get more into the world of just adding value. I want to challenge you. If you don't have a project management office, How about beginning socializing project management by having, I don't know, something we can call a project value gathering, or just call it whatever you like, but bring project managers together to share lessons learned, to share ideas, to retrospect, and to share tools. And I've done this in organizations that consult with me, and honestly, it works. While a PMO is great, a lot of times PMOs get a bad rap. And, like one of the organizations I trained, it was one of Warren Buffett's companies, and they said, Phil, don't say PMO here. We're not doing that. We tried it, it didn't work. It had a very negative connotation. It became draconian. And I said, I get the memo. I understand. So instead of looking at, you must do this, you have to do this, show people the value. This is the why behind the tool. This is the why behind the process. It helps. And that's where the law of strategic retrospection comes in. What I would love to see in a lot of companies is just retrospecting as project managers. What is one profound thing you learned on your project this month that you want to share with the rest of the organization? Put that construct in place. Call it whatever you want. Call it a project value gathering. The word office scares people a lot of times, but I want you to think about adding value to your firm. All right? Be a leader, add value to your projects, add value to your firm, add value to your chapter. You'll learn a lot by getting involved with your PMI chapter and just learning by being a part or by giving back. All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you for coming through. Thanks to Cyndi for her talk today. If there are any questions, now will be a brilliant time to ask questions or concerns. I never like closing these onlines without answering your questions. Anybody got a question? Question. Everyone's all cute and quiet. I don't see any questions. Any questions about the world of the PMP or the world of anything project related or leadership related? All right. In the absence of questions, let me check my Instagram friends. Those of you on Instagram, Anosh, thank you for coming through. ITZ, Vishesh, thanks for coming through. And Safira, thank you for coming through. And all those of you who came through on YouTube. If you don't chat in on YouTube, it doesn't let me know that you were there. But I want to say thank you once again. I look forward to speaking to you again soon. You take care. Be a leader. Bye for now.